Welcome back to Half the Battle. I'm your host, as always, Daniel Levy, and today we're going to talk about Dana White Contender Series Week 4. My friends, it's going down this Tuesday night live at the Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada. Once again, we got 10 prospects looking to fight for a UFC contract. So real quick, just want to give a quick disclaimer to all the fans. Firstly, thank you all for being here. Man, I'm super under the weather. Was out of town on vacation, and it seems like every time I go to the West Coast, that desert air always messes with me. So bear with me, but no excuses. We're here to put on a show and give some good information out. And I also want to say this week of Contender Series is a little weird. You know, that first week we had an incredible prospect in Mansour Abdul Malik. The third week we had Malcolm Wellmaker. Y'all heard how excited I was to talk about him. This week it's a little different. So without further ado,
let's get down to business. Give you one more night to get this. We've had a million nights just like this. So let's get down to business.
First up in the lightweight division, we got a matchup between Quillan, Salkilld. He's 6-1, taking on Gage Young, who's 8-1. And currently they got it Quillan, Salkilld, minus 200. The comeback on Gage Young is plus 160. So right off the bat, this is one of those fights. The first fight of the night, it seems like for a lot of these shows have been really well matched, whether it was the Kavanagh versus Ho, whether it was Cody Haddon versus Billy Brand. And I think this fight right here falls right under there as well. And with that being said, I've kind of had a similar consistent theme with those two fights. I thought they kind of should have been lined closer. It turns out they shouldn't have been. You know, Cody Haddon and Kavanagh were clear favorites. But here, before the fact, I'm kind of feeling like maybe the line is a bit wide because these two seem like they're UFC ready right now. I mean, you're talking about two guys I think that you can throw in towards the bottom end of the 55-pound division. Like you put them in there with a guy like John Makdessi in their debut, something like that. And I think that both these guys can do fine. You know, when I look at a guy like Quillan Salkilld, obviously he's from Australia. He does train with the aforementioned Cody Haddon. And man, this guy is super long. You know, he's 6 feet tall at 155 pounds. He's only 24 years old. And the guy's a scrapper, man. He's got some underrated power too. He only has 2 knockouts on his record, but he gets reactions from guys when he hits them. So that's good to see. And then on the mat, he's pretty opportunistic too. Obviously, the takedown defense ain't the best. You know, they ain't known for their wrestling down under, but he's got some opportunistic submission ability as well. And then with Gage Young, he also seems like a UFC ready type kid. You know, he's from the US and he's a guy that seems a bit more athletic than his opponent, but a little bit on the shorter side, you know, 5'9" versus 6 feet, both 24 years old. I like that Gage Young. He seems a little bit more educated with his stand-up, you know, a lot of switching stances and a super well-rounded kid. But I just see both these guys as fighters that can be successful in the lightweight division. I'm not saying they're going to be top 15 guys or anything like that, but I think that both guys can win fights in the UFC right now. As far as how they match up, like I said, the Australian Quillan Salkilld, he's going to be the taller, longer guy here. He's been 5 rounds before. A lot of people on this episode have been 5 rounds before, which is interesting to see. And with Gage Young, man, I really like what I see from this kid. I like where he trains. You know, used to be with James Krause and them, now is at the new gym, wherever that is, and just seems like a good American lightweight prospect, man. Well-rounded, everything. So yeah, I like both these guys a lot. It's you know, I'm saying a lot to tell you guys that I like both these guys. It's hard to really gauge, no pun intended, how they truly match up, because when you see their regional competition, it hasn't been the stiffest, but they've handled everybody accordingly. You know, I know both had unfortunate submission losses, but I don't think that was truly a reflection of how good these guys are. I think that was kind of, you know, rookie mistakes you make, that, you know, things that can easily be patched up and stuff that I won't hold against them. So I'm really thinking this should be minus 110 apiece. I might be way off about that, but I'm gonna go Gage Young here for the upset, man. Again, it's nothing against his opponent. I think his opponent's really good, but I'm just curious why he's plus 160 here. I think it should be lined a bit closer. So for that reason, I'm gonna go Gage Young for the upset. Now, next up in the flyweight division, we got a matchup between two undefeated women's prospects. We got Yuneisy Duben. She's 4-0, representing Venezuela, taking on Shannon Clark, who's 5-0, rep in Canada. Currently, they got it. Shannon Clark minus 600. The comeback on Duben is plus 425. It's a bit wide, but when you watch Duben's regional tape, I mean, first of all, let's talk about that last opponent, Ingrid Garcia, who's 0-0 and like was completely timid to even throw. And that girl actually took her down, which is kind of a red flag. Like the thing about Duben is that she's got a lot of physical attributes. Seems like she's a natural fighter. Hits kind of hard for the weight class, has a good natural sprawl, and has that, you know, is a real fighter, just has never been tested before, has never truly fought anybody, because over in Venezuela, we know that MMA is completely undeveloped. And then on the other side with Shannon Clark, you know, she's an aggressive Canadian and she has fought better competition. You know, in that last fight, she submitted an undefeated Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt with a bulldog choke, and she overcame adversity in that fight. But there are definitely holes in her game too. Make no mistake about it. But what I do like about her is I like her aggression. I like how she goes forward the entire time. I like how when she gets taken down, she's throwing elbows off her back, Carlos Condit style. So that's good to see. It's just Duben is kind of an unknown because, like I said, you haven't really seen her go up against a fighter, but that's not her fault. And when I say that, here's what I mean by that, guys. Every single person she's fought has a 0-0 record. So literally, when you talk about cans, this is the definition of can crushing, but it's not Duben's fault because, again, I don't think they really have anybody on that Venezuelan scene. And it's evident and apparent that she deserves a step up. She deserves to actually be tested against someone who's going to fight her. And I think that Shannon Clark is the person that's going to fight her. And even though Shannon Clark hasn't fought the best level of competition either, she's at least fought people, you know, with fights under their belt, not a bunch of 0-0 opponents. So like experience counts for a lot, and she's minus 600 for that reason. But will she look minus 600? Because minus 600 means she's just going to come out here and smoke Duben. And I'm not that convinced. Like I said, I know Duben hasn't fought anything, anybody, and all that, but she's at least looked decent handling these 0-0 opponents. Like I said, she's earned this step up in competition. So let's see how she does with it. I do, by default, have to go with the Canadian Clark. I mean, I just don't agree with minus 600. I mean, I don't think she's going to look minus 600, but I just like the fact that she's a little bit more battle tested, slightly more polished, comes from a better regional scene, and has seen more things inside the cage. So for that reason, I'm going to pick Shannon Clark, but I'm going to be paying attention. Let's see if you really look minus 600 in this spot, because I don't foresee that being the case, but we're going to tune in and find out. So let's see. Now, next up in the featherweight division, we got a matchup between Austin Bashi, he's 12-0, taking on Dorian Ramos, who's 8-2. Currently, they got it Austin Bashi minus 550. The comeback on Dorian Ramos is plus 400. So this one, I can see why he's minus 550 in the spot. Like we were talking about the last fight with a minus 500, where I wasn't quite too sure if the skill gap is really that wide. Whereas here, the skill gap really is that wide. I mean, when you're talking about this kid, Dorian Ramos, and no disrespect to him at all, you know, seems like a good kid, but he wasn't even supposed to be on the Contenders. You know, Austin Bashi had a different opponent, Tommy, and that was going to be a hell of a fight because those are two stud regional prospects. So they just had to find this Dorian dude last minute. And I mean, listen, man, he's tough. He comes to fight. He's kind of a vet on the regional scene. So, you know, I feel good when I see those vets and those journeymen get their opportunity on Contender Series. Like, I'm happy for the kid. But Austin Bashi is a legitimate prospect, only 22 years old, and guys already 12-0 as a pro. He comes from a really good regional scene. He comes from Lights Out in Michigan. I mean, that's the same regional scene that developed Jamal Hill, for example, who went on to go to become a UFC champion. And when you look at Austin Bashi's record, I mean, it's filled with veterans that are known amongst the regional scene. You know, guys like Pipe Vargas, guys like Askar, who actually had a UFC contract, and I think he had some kind of health concern. I don't remember what the deal was, but he got signed to the UFC, and then they released him without him having a single fight. And even Zach Riley, who back in the day, I remember when he beat Boston Salmon on the regional scene. So what I'm trying to say is, like, Austin Bashi's been fighting real legitimate competition for regional standards, and he's been treating them very, 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 very accordingly, man. I mean, we talked about guys that have been 5 rounds before. Bashi's been 5 rounds before. This guy is a nasty wrestler. I'm not exactly sure what his wrestling credentials are. Someone please let me know in the comments, but it's pretty evident and apparent that this guy grew up wrestling. This guy wrestled probably in high school, maybe even in college, if you went to college. I don't know. He's 22 years old. Maybe he didn't go to college, but it's evident that this guy knows how to wrestle his ass off. He's a well-rounded guy. Nasty submissions on the mat. I mean, seems to me like Austin Bashi is not just going to win this fight, not just get a contract, but I think that he can be a problem in the UFC featherweight division, man. Honestly, he's a guy that he might not even need to go through Contender Series. You can just come into the UFC right away, but I get it. Contender Series has a lot of eyes on you, and give this kid Austin Bashi a little showcase, give him a chance to go viral with a highlight. Let's see if he does, because you know what's going to be interesting to me? If he comes out here and just grinds out this dude and makes it boring and doesn't get a contract, and then we'll have a really good guy that didn't make it to the UFC. But that's why Austin has to come out here. Winning is not enough, man. Like, let's come out here, let's slam this dude on his head, let's pass his guard, let's start to set up one of our nice submissions and get this contract, man. So yeah, I'm gonna go Austin Bashi here to run through Dorian Ramos. Now, next up in the middleweight division, we got a matchup between Will Currie, he's 12-3, taking on Diorden Santos, who's 9-1. Currently, they got it. Will Currie -360. The comeback on Diorden Santos Ribeiro is +285. Yeah, this is another one where I'm not quite sure about the odds, man. Like, when you were talking about Austin Bashi, like, I think he should definitely be -500 here. Whereas this kid, Will Currie, I'm not exactly convinced he should be a big favorite here. And what I've gathered from Will Currie is that the guy is very athletic. The guy's a specimen. And early on in fights, he's a showstopper, man. I mean, he's got nasty dexterity with his kicks. He's well-rounded. But the issue I've had with Currie is that when people stand up to him, he might kind of fold up in fights. He might kind of stay on his back for prolonged periods of times. If you can get past that initial burst that Will Currie has, you can break this guy. Now, with this guy, Santos, he's kind of a wild card, because if you go and you watch his fight, and both of these guys had an ugly loss to like a journeyman on their regional scene. But if you go back and you watch Santos's loss, right, when he lost to that 13-9 guy, dude, when you watch that fight, I mean, he looks fat. It's at 205. You're like, yeah, this guy has no chance to be in the UFC. But you fast forward to his most recent fight, and this guy's had a physical transformation, man. I mean, now he looks lean. Now he looks in shape. He's a heavy kicker. His takedown defense is pretty damn good. His get-up game is on point. He's decently athletic. He's just kind of a wild card. We don't really know much about him, especially considering the fact, like I said, he's had a massive transformation. Like, if you compare his last loss to his most recent fight, it does not even look like the same guy. And Will Currie, we were talking about losing to journeyman. We're also talking about going 5 rounds. Another guy that's been 5 rounds. Dude, he lost to Mick Stanton in a 5-round fight, who was 10-7 at the time, 13-8 now. How old's Mick Stanton? He's got to be up there, right? Yeah, 37 years old. Like, this guy was a literal jobber, the kind of guy you're supposed to run through and get a UFC opportunity. And that guy took everything you had and kept marching forward and grinded you out. It was a terrible look. So this is one where I don't agree with Will Currie being that big of a favorite. I think the only way he's that big of a favorite is he has to come out here and make a statement early. But the longer the fight goes, historically speaking, does not really favor Will Currie that much. He is a bit of a front runner. He is, you know, kind of a bully. So I'm gonna go Santos, man. Excuse me. I'm gonna go Santos here, man. I think that the early going, there's gonna be some explosive exchanges and scrambles and whatnot, but I think that Santos has the better cardio and he can take over later on in the fight. But you do have to be aware of that early finish possibility from Currie, because He is dangerous. He is athletic, and he's just a young kid too. But historically speaking, I don't think that he's the toughest, and I think that this price might be a little bit off. So I'm gonna go Santos here to get this upset in the co-main. Now, main event of the evening in the welterweight division, we got a matchup between Igor Jacare Calvacanti. He's 9-0, taking on Seok Hyun, who's 10-2. Currently, they got it. Igor Calvacanti minus 275. The comeback on Seok Hyun is plus 215. So, yeah, this kid, Igor Jacare Calvacanti, there's not that much footage on him, but what I have seen, I've liked a lot. This guy has high amplitude takedowns, man. This guy will come out there, pick you up, and slam you. He's nasty on the ground. He's super athletic. He hits very, very hard. He kicks hard as well. But where it's really at with him, like I said, that nickname Jacare, that's not just a cute little nickname to throw around. This guy is nasty on the mat. And with his opponent, Hyun, I like this guy, man. I mean, 10-2, and 8 of those fights have ended in knockout, 6 of them being wins of his, 2 of them being knockout losses. But like, this guy's a brawler, man. He's a southpaw. He comes out there, he likes to get right in your face, and he likes to fight. And just man to man, I respect that. So I tip my proverbial cap to a guy like Hyun because he puts on the kind of fights that the fans want to see. And I think he's going to come out here and try to brawl with Igor Calvacanti. The issue is that I think he's going to leave openings for those takedowns. I think he's going to get picked up and slammed. And from there, I'm not really sure what Buddy's ground game is like. From what I can tell from Hyun is that he's just an exciting brawler, kind of a bit on the slower side. Reminds me of like an Asian Stevie Ray at welterweight. Like, has that same body type at, with the southpaw stance, just maybe a little bit of a harder hitter and more of a brawler. But when they move, they kind of move similar, a little bit on the slower side, but kind of crafty. It's just that what I can tell from Calvacanti, like I said, I know there's not much footage on him, but what I have seen, seems like this kid's the goods, man. And it seems like he's going to, close the distance, change levels, duck under, pick this guy up over his head, slam him, pass guard, and submit this guy. That's my prediction. I think Igor Calvacanti is going to come out here and dominate Hyun, especially on the ground, and I think he's going to get a UFC contract. So for that reason, I'm picking Igor Jacare Calvacanti. Now we got to talk about the fight to watch and the fighter to watch. So what is the fight to watch? My friends, once again, the fight to watch is the first fight of the night between Quillan Salkilld and Gage Young. I mean, again, these are 2 lightweight prospects. These guys are super well-rounded. These guys are finishers. They go for it. They're dangerous. They're hungry. They're young. Like, I can see both of these guys in the UFC this time next year. So for that reason, the first fight of the night is my fight to watch. Who is my fighter to watch? I got 2 fighters to watch. Obviously, Austin Bashi. He might be the best prospect on this entire show, but I'm going to go with the main event, Igor Calvacanti, man. Like Igor Jacare, like I said, I know there's not much footage on him, but what I've seen, this guy looks super dangerous. This guy looks like the goods. Like, I know he hasn't been fighting the best guys, but he's been like picking them up and throwing them out the cage type ordeal. He's been handling them very, very accordingly. So for that reason, he's my fighter to watch. Well, my friends, we did it. It's going down this Tuesday night live at the Apex. I really appreciate y'all bearing with me. I know I'm super under the weather today, but I didn't want to leave the fans hanging. So thank you all so much for your support. Shout out Malcolm Wellmaker getting that UFC contract. That really made me very, very happy to see another Georgia kid doing his thing, man. So I can't wait to see him in the UFC. Make sure y'all smash the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave me a comment. If you feel so inclined to share, please do that. And I'll be back later this week to break down the UFC card. So until the next time, let's cash these bets.